Greetings everyone, I'm Adam Haritan, and today I'm looking for trees. And I'm not just looking for any trees, I'm looking for some pretty special trees. You know, a lot of people who are interested in finding neat things in nature might look for beautiful overlooks or beautiful rock formations or waterfalls or edible plants or edible mushrooms or maybe a chance encounter with a migratory bird or a black bear or even a Sasquatch. But not too many people look for pines. And why would they? Pines are incredibly common. In fact, pines make up the largest genus of conifers in the world, with over 100 species in the Pinus genus. Pines grow all throughout the wild. They grow in parks. Pines grow in cemeteries and in arboretums. Pines grow in our yards. So how fun, really, could looking for a pine tree be? Well, I'm here to tell you, looking for a pine can be incredibly fun and rewarding when you decide to look for one that's not only not too common in your home state, but one that's quite old and quite large. Today I'm looking for a pine that fits both of those criteria, and the name of the tree is red pine, Pinus resinosa. Let's go find it. This is an incredibly special spot. Right now I'm standing in the presence of a tree that's rarely found in this form in my home state of Pennsylvania. This is an older growth red pine, Pinus resinosa, and this tree is estimated to be approximately 250 years old. Even better, there are dozens of these trees scattered throughout this steep hillside. Now, red pine is easily identified. It's easily distinguished from other pines when you take into account three features. Number one, the bark of red pine contains noticeable red coloration. This red can be orangish red or pinkish red or brownish red, but some variation of the color red will be present on the bark of red pine. Number two, the needle-like leaves of red pine are long and they are produced in bundles or fascicles of 2. These leaves snap cleanly when you bend them in half. And number 3, the mature seed cones are medium-sized, typically between 1.5 to 2.5 inches long, and the cone scales do not contain prickles. Now, if you know anything about trees, and if you know anything about red pine in particular, 2 things that I've said so far in this video might cause you to scratch your head, or to wonder aloud, or maybe even to mutter under your breath, or maybe even to express your discomfort in the comments section. Before you start typing away, let me explain myself. I mentioned that red pine is not too common in my home state of Pennsylvania, and I mentioned that a 250-year-old tree could be considered older growth. Both of those statements require further clarification. So right now, I'm still in Pennsylvania, but I'm a few hundred miles from my home, and my home is in western Pennsylvania. I came here specifically to find red pine. That might seem like bizarre behavior because there are many parks by my home in western PA that contain hundreds of red pine trees. So why did I come here? Well, I came here to find a natural stand of red pine. You see, the classically defined native range of red pine is fairly limited, being confined primarily to the northeastern United States, southeastern Canada, and the Great Lakes regions. This range does not include western Pennsylvania. Today, however, red pine can be found well outside of this classically defined native range, including in western Pennsylvania, because the tree was and still is commonly planted as part of restoration efforts. So in many of the state and county parks in western Pennsylvania where I live, extensive red pine plantations can be found. And you can tell that these stands are intentional plantations because the trees generally grow in very straight rows. One group that was instrumental in planting red pine plantations throughout the Northeast in the 1930s was the Civilian Conservation Corps, or the CCC. Today, I'm not in a Civilian Conservation Corps red pine plantation. I'm in a wilder habitat in which red pine grows. This place is a dry, rocky, steep slope, the perfect habitat for rattlesnakes, by the way, and it's leading down into a stream. And you can tell that this isn't a plantation because of the habitat, and also because the trees are growing in a more scattered fashion. So yes, technically red pine can be found all throughout Pennsylvania, but natural stands that were not intentionally planted by humans are not too common in the state. Regarding the second point, these red pines are older growth trees, somewhere around 250 years old. Now, 250 years might not seem like a long time, especially when we think about an old growth eastern hemlock, which can live for 600 years or even longer, or maybe even a bristlecone pine, which can live for thousands of years. 250 years for a red pine, however, is fairly impressive, and the maximum age reached by the species is somewhere around 350 to 400 years. Now, the presence of older growth red pine on this steep slope tells us something quite remarkable about the history of this land. Red pine is mostly shade intolerant, and germination of a red pine seed in the wild usually requires bare mineral soil. One of the conditions that creates bare mineral soil is fire. And throughout the ecological literature, red pine is listed as a species that's largely dependent on fire. Successful natural regeneration of red pine, therefore, depends to a great extent on fire. And it's highly likely that a fire occurred here on this slope 250 or so years ago. Interestingly, researchers have studied quite intensively the historical presence of fire in this general area. Not on this particular slope, but in the surrounding forests. And what researchers have found was that numerous fires occurred all around here just in the past 400 years alone. Now, the fire that occurred on this hillside could have been ignited by lightning, but it could also have been ignited by settlers who burned the land to promote the growth of fruiting shrubs, to maintain open areas for hunting, and to facilitate travel. And this practice of burning the land to yield these outcomes was undoubtedly learned from the burning practices implemented by indigenous cultures, specifically the Iroquois and the Susquehannocks, who used this particular land as their hunting grounds. Now, old-growth red pine forests are incredibly rare today. It's estimated that they occupy less than 1% of their original range in North America. The old-growth red pine stands that currently exist probably will not continue to exist without fire, or at the very least, without canopy disturbance caused by windstorms. Where I'm standing, on this steep slope in Pennsylvania, very little red pine regeneration exists. And how could it? Conditions are too shady, and there's certainly not enough bare mineral soil present in order for red pine seedlings to become established. But there's no denying that this steep slope currently hosts a very diverse ecosystem. In addition to red pine, there's paper birch, there's chestnut oak, American witch hazel, even American chestnut. And of course, there are all the animals and insects and fungi that could not exist here today without the presence of all these trees and shrubs. So I'll just conclude this video by saying I feel really lucky to be able to witness such remarkable trees today, and I hope that an encounter like the one I'm experiencing right now shows you that even something as seemingly mundane as a pine tree can be worth your utmost attention, your greatest appreciation, and your deepest gratitude. I mentioned in the introduction that not many people spend their time today looking for pines, but perhaps after watching this video, you will be among the select few who take up the work, now that you know how rewarding such a search can be. Thanks so much for watching this video. I truly appreciate it. If you enjoyed it and you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, I encourage you to subscribe to the Learn Your Land YouTube channel. You can also head on over to learnyourland.com and sign up for the email newsletter. And if you are on social media, feel free to give Learn Your Land a follow on Instagram and on Facebook. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next video.